Hello everybody, it's another video about some of my gear. I just thought I'd like to ask you all just to like and subscribe. It does help sort of get the channel out there. It's nice to get some viewers. I'm not particularly worried about making any money out of this. I just really quite enjoy informing people. So this is a little case that I picked up one of these Intellijel palette 62 HP cases, and I thought it'd be fun to I also got this Lifeforms Voltage Lab, which had some awful videos put up about it, because I mean it's the usual people that get sent the gear and then they sort of plonk about with it for a couple of weeks, and that's the end of it. They don't really use it again. I got intrigued by it because I saw somebody using it for real, and I came to realise it's basically a BUCHLA easel, very much kind of BUCHLA setup, easel setup, and it intrigued me. So at the end of this video, or at the end of this section of the video, there'll be a link down in the description, and you can jump straight to the track that I did. It's actually probably about the third thing I've done with this, so it's not, it's nothing spectacular, but it does sort of give an idea of the sort of thing you can do with it. I haven't really got to grips yet with some of the things in the dynamics controllers, which is not why would I haven't had it long enough to really. I don't think it's one of those modules that you ever really master. It's very, very experimental. But I thought I'd build a case around it using this little palette, which I say I picked up really quite cheap. So what did I put in there? Well, the first thing I did was I put a USB power out. That will actually, I've got a lead that allows me to power the make noise O control, zero control, whatever, however you want to call it, which obviously gives me the a touch and sequencing, and all sorts of other things as well. I have the output module here, the Befaco Out, really nice. It actually links with the case. There's a cable that links it to the case, so I have the two left and right outputs coming here for live use and for recording, etc. It also has a headphone socket on it, and it has a cue in, so that you can actually, if you're setting something up, you want to see how it sounds before you actually put it to the main master out, you can just flick the switch there and you can listen to the cue, whatever you've got going into there, before you actually put it into the mix. I have the Intellijel 2-channel stereo mixer here, which I've got these little cables permanently connecting the mixer to the out. And then over here I have the Endorphin.es running order, which is a trigger sequencer. I use it, so far I've been using it just for triggering the drums and talking to the drums. I have the Pico drums sample player here. I also have the programmer, so I can actually load my own sounds onto it. But anyway, back to the running order. It you can sequence gate sequences, or it has an extremely good Euclidean. I couldn't think of the word there. My mind went completely blank. It has a really good Euclidean sequencer, 2-channel Euclidean sequencer on it. It has they managed somehow to make it really confusing in their videos, Endorphins. It's actually very simple, especially the Euclidean mode is very, very simple to use. They've just made it extremely complicated, and in the manual, for some reason, made it extremely complicated. I might do a video on it myself. But it's actually very straightforward. The programming, the trigger programming is a little more effort involved, but for the Euclidean, which is what I've been using it mostly for at the moment, it's extremely good. You can also use it as a master clock, but if you clock it from something else, you also have clock divisions and clock multipliers. So it's a really good little module. So I've said about the Pico drums. Next along, we have the Ornament and Crime, which I use one of the Hemispheres firmwares. I can't remember which one it is. I'll put a link to it in the description. But this one allows you to use Hemispheres, but also you have access to a lot of the original Ornament and Crime stuff. So it has sequins on it, which is a sequencer that I really like. So I get kind of the best of both worlds by using this particular firmware. It's very useful when I'm using the zero control, because obviously that the one failing of the zero control, it has no quantizing at all on it. Which is great. It's a fine if you're in the studio. You could spend time carefully tuning things, but when you're playing live, you really do need quantized sometimes. So I have it as a default set up with a dual quantizer and a Turing machine on the other side, but that obviously can change. There's all kinds of combinations you can have on that. Okay, jumping across from the Lifeforms Voltage Lab, I have the Pico DSP, which is effects, 8 effects in a little 3 HP unit. It's extremely good. The stereo delay and the pitch delay are particularly good, but there's not a bad effect on there, I'll be honest with you. Okay, so to the Lifeforms Voltage Lab. From Pittsburgh Modular here. So, as I said, has this sort of BUCHLA kind of feel to it, with a main oscillator. You have, they call it the secondary oscillator, but it's like the modulating oscillator on the EASEL. You have 2 function generators here. Now, if you actually look at what's going on in these function generators, you have the ability to cycle them, trigger them, cycle them. You can use a sustain mode where the gate that it receives is gives you the sustain length. You have rise and fall, and you have the response. So you can have a exponential response. You could have all kinds of different responses that you can get out of that. There's a rise and fall CV on both, and at both rise and fall from the same CV source. It's very like a maths, a small version of maths. There's logic, there's logical or there's contrast. So you get, if one or the other, you'll get the logic there, or the contrast between the two. Really, really good. It has end of rise on the first one and end of fall on the second one. They're gates. So when it gets to the top of the rise, it sends a gate out. End of fall is when it gets to the bottom of the fall. basically the beginning is which is basically the beginning of end of fall is the same as start of rise, if you understand what I mean. So it triggers at the beginning, very similar to the way maths works. You can pretty much patch this up the same. I've done a few things with it that it kind of has a lot of similarities. You then have these dynamics controllers. I haven't really got to grips with these yet because they do so much. You can have several modes on it. There's a low-pass gate. There's a plucked low-pass gate. There's a VCA. There's a filter. Or there's a plucked filter. That's a hell of a lot, and they all does. There's one knob here which is filter resonance, and that obviously only works on the filter mode, but all the other knobs will work on the other modes. Really, really quite subtle and complex, both subtle and complex things that you seem to be able to get out of it, depending on how you trigger it. It's really, as I say, I haven't yet completely got to grips with it, and why would I? Haven't had it very long, but that's something I will certainly be experimenting with. The manual is it's kind of a pointer, really. It's such a complex beast. You can't really write a manual on this. You can only just sort of really say what the things do. They've done their best, but it's quite difficult. It's very complex. Now, in addition to that, the stuff that doesn't have any knobs here, there is a random CV source and a random gate source. Now, they're clocked. So you can clock this either internally from its own internal clock source, which is tap tempo. You can clock it externally from MIDI, or you can clock it externally using gates from a regular clock source. I can clock it on here using the Endorphins here. I can clock it using its internal gate from here. I could clock it from something in Ornament and Crime. There's all kinds of things I could do. I could set one of these to cycle and clock it from the end of rise or end of fall. It's very. I have a lot of options as far as clocking stuff and sending out gates on this. Right. In addition to the random, you also have sample and hold, and it also has a dedicated noise output. The sample and hold is normalized. It's normal to the noise, which is quite usual. Usually it's quite a common way to use sample and hold with noise, but you can put anything in to the sample input, and that breaks that normalization. And you could also use the noise as well as using it with the sample and hold. So you have in those 6 little inputs and outputs there, you have quite a lot of good random stuff that you can get going on. Most of the knobs have an input for CV with either an attenuverter or an attenuator. The function generators both have rise and fall attenuverters. And when you put a voltage into both CV, you can adjust the rise and fall attenuverters to say how much of that CV goes to each of them. So it's quite powerful. And that's it in a nutshell, really. It's quite a nice little system. I'll be doing quite a few videos with this, I think, as I start getting used to it. I don't think. I mean, this isn't for sale anymore. It's sold out. I was very lucky. I picked up a second-hand one. The only thing I didn't get with it was I don't know if any of you saw this when it was originally they did it with like a horrible. It was horrible as well. So they actually had to go on one touch thing that they did. I didn't like it at all. I mean, I say it's horrible. Some people probably loved it. I didn't like it at all. And it had this like sort of mixer thing on the side. It seemed quite a waste of space. The in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, the Make Noise Zero Control does a far better job of doing stuff with this. So I was quite glad to pick up just a module. It was nice. The only thing I didn't get with it, I didn't get the MIDI cable that comes with it. So I don't know what type of MIDI thing it is. I have tried the MIDI, but I haven't tried very hard, I'll be honest with you. I haven't managed to get that working from external MIDI. But I will. It's just I haven't really tried very hard. Certainly, that is probably one of its main failings. If I was going to criticise it, is this MIDI to CV converter thing that they've got on the side here. It's too many key combinations. The problem is this is like a shift. This one here is just slightly offset from the others is a shift, which gives you shifts on all these, which is fine if it did one thing. But as you come to use it, depending on what mode it's in, different, like the same combination of keys does different things, and it gets a little bit confusing sometimes. You try to do something, you realize, I've changed the wrong thing. But hey, there's 5 buttons and a shift, so you're basically they've got to get lots of functions into a small space, which they've done. I'd rather that had a very small space there than they crushed everything down here more. You couldn't really fit much more onto this and make it as usable as it is. It also has these little buttons, which you have in the primary oscillator, for instance. You have this one marked wave. At the moment, it's set for a sine wave, which is the light that's lit up there. If I press it again, the light down here comes on, which is marked warp. And that gives you this it gives you a warped sine wave, and so on. So you have triangle, warped triangle, saw, warped saw, square, warped square. Then you have sine and saw and a warped version. And you have triangle and square and a warped version. Quite powerful. The good thing about this warping thing is, generally speaking, when you're using a wave folder, which is what this timbre knob is, it doesn't work as effectively on more complex waves, such as square waves, as it does on simple ones like sine waves. But because you could warp the square wave, it actually makes it really effective with the wave folder. So it really does give you a lot of sounds. You can modulate this oscillator with this oscillator, but this oscillator can be completely independent and has its own pitch input. The only thing you can't do is you can't FM the secondary oscillator. You can only FM the primary one. Secondary oscillator, you could use the secondary oscillator to FM this oscillator. In fact, you could use anything. There's an FM input, so you don't have to use that. But they together they make up a complex oscillator. You can modulate lots of different things using this oscillator as well, not just FM. You can modulate FM. You can modulate the wave selection, so you can actually have the waves like a bit like the meta that used to be on the mutable instruments stuff. Amplitude, ring modulation, and there's combinations. You can have FM and ring modulation at the same time, which is quite interesting. But anyway, that's just it. A brief rundown. Oh, I forgot there's also a Bucket Brigade delay, analog delay here, which is surprisingly good. I'm not always a fan of some of the Bucket Brigade stuff. The one on the Erica Synths Pico system is, again, my opinion, it's a horrible thing. It oscillates. It goes into self-oscillation far too easily, and renders itself sort of fairly unusable in some situations. This one, it will do self-oscillation, but you really have to push it to do that. It's very musical, very nice musical delay, and that's it. So now before I recorded this bit, I did the first recorded track that I've done using the Voltage Lab. So let's play it and see what you think.
Bye.